Hello friends, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. As stated in my previous video, I have decided to change the format of this channel to start discussing my hobbies and things that I enjoy rather than talking about diet or weight loss. For this first video, I decided to go ahead and do a video talking about the tabletop role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. I started playing Dungeons and Dragons around the time that 5th edition was released. I had wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons prior to this, however I had no idea of where to begin, what to buy, or how to start playing the game. I also didn't understand that the different iterations or editions of Dungeons and Dragons were actually different games altogether, and you didn't need to buy all of the books that you found on the shelves of your local game shop or bookstore. The actual truth of it is that once you can recognize the current product for Dungeons & Dragons, that being 5th edition, you can easily select the products that you would like to purchase for your game or your campaign. In this video, I'm going to focus on what you would need to get in order to get started playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. There are actually 3 different ways you could get started playing Dungeons & Dragons, and I'll explain all of those to you. First of all, let's discuss how you can recognize Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition products whenever you go to make your purchase. Fortunately, Dungeons & Dragons seems to change its logo from edition to edition. Currently, they're on 5th edition, and the logo looks like this. As you can see, all of these products have a very similar look and layout, and they all feature this. I personally like to call that the banner logo. To tell you the truth, I'm not sure what the official name for that logo is, but I like to call it the banner logo. Let's take a look at the starter box here so you can see the front of it and see how the artwork is laid out. You have D&D at the top, the name of the product right below that, and then there's like this red slash there, and then down here is the banner logo. The player's handbook is also laid out, similar artwork style. And once again, you can see the D&D, the name of the product, the red dash, and then the banner logo. The monster manual, very similar once again. D&D, monster manual, and the red at the bottom there. The Dungeon Master's Guide, same thing. So as you can see, the artwork and the layout of the 5th edition products all looks very similar. None of the other editions have this same look and layout to them. So whenever you go to the store and you see this look and this layout, you will be able to easily recognize 5th edition products. For the purposes of this video, you can ignore any books or products that do not feature, the similar artwork style and this book layout, and of course anything that does not feature the official Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition logo. There is one book that is an exception to this, however, and that book is Volo's Guide to Monsters. This particular book is a special edition copy with the black cover. However, you can still purchase Volo's Guide to Monsters with the traditional layout like the rest of these books have. Also, if you take a look here, let me just show you, for example, all of the official Wizards of the Coast 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons products all have that same artwork style and layout and the red banner logo, as I like to call it. Okay, great, Painted Clown. Now you've explained how I can recognize Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition products when I go looking for them. However, you still haven't explained, what do I need to purchase in order to get started playing? In order for me to cover this, there are some things that I need to explain. Before purchasing any Dungeons & Dragons products, I do believe that it is essential to understand a little bit about how Dungeons & Dragons is actually played. D&D is usually played with 5 people. The first 4 people are what are called player characters, or PCs. These are the people that will be running through the adventure, walking around in the world, discovering things, meeting people, interacting with NPCs, and of course fighting with bad guys and monsters. The other player is called a Dungeon Master, or DM. The Dungeon Master will be controlling all non-player characters, as well as any monsters that the party may encounter. In addition to that, the DM acts as a referee, a person to adjudicate rules questions if they may arise. Also, the DM is the person who describes the world to the players. They're the person who sort of, that starts off the story by explaining what's going on, where the players are at, and what the world around them looks like, and feels like, and sometimes even smells like. It depends on how descriptive you want to be as a Dungeon Master. So, the first thing you need to do when gathering up all of your friends to play Dungeons & Dragons is to decide who's going to be the Dungeon Master. The Dungeon Master is usually the person who's trying to convince all of their friends to play Dungeons & Dragons with them. However, it can be someone who may be familiar with Dungeons & Dragons or role-playing games in general, or maybe a friend who likes the idea of taking on the role of the Dungeon Master. The Dungeon Master role is more difficult than the role that the players will have. However, I find it to be a very rewarding experience. In addition to that, outside of the game, the Dungeon Master has a lot of work and preparation that goes into planning the next adventure session. So I look at that as additional time playing the game, so to speak. To me, it's a fun and rewarding experience, and I do highly encourage everyone out there to try being a Dungeon Master at least once. Everyone else in the group, of course, will be the player characters or the PCs. Now that you have an understanding of how the game is played, let's get back to the books and products. Dungeons & Dragons has 3 core rule books. These are the 3 books you see now. That is the Player's Handbook, the Monster Manual, and the Dungeon Master's Guide. If you're going to be the Dungeon Master, it is advisable that you eventually purchase all 3 of these books. However, if you're going to be a PC or player character only, you are not required to purchase all 3 of these books. You can purchase what is called the Player's Handbook. The Player's Handbook is a book of options for the players. It explains to you how to roll up a character, the classes and races that you can choose from, your weapons and armor and things of that nature. In addition to that, it has the rules for playing the game, like how combat works and such. The Monster Manual is exactly what you think it would be. It's a book of bad guys and villains and monsters, including their stats, any special information about them, and there may even be some additional information about where you may find them or how to run them. The Dungeon Master's Guide is a book of additional options for the Dungeon Master to use when creating worlds or running the game. Although these are the 3 core rule books to play Dungeons & Dragons, to get started, you actually do not need to purchase any of them. Although Dungeons & Dragons has 3 core rule books, you are not required to purchase any of them in order to get you and your group up and playing Dungeons & Dragons. What you can do instead is to purchase the starter set. This is the option that I recommend the most for any group that's new to Dungeons & Dragons and role-playing games in general. Inside of the starter set, you will find everything that you need to get you and your group playing Dungeons & Dragons. Let's open up the box and take a look to see what's inside. Inside of the starter set, you will find a set of polyhedral dice. These are the dice that are used for playing Dungeons & Dragons when it comes to the mechanical aspects of the game, such as combat or for when the Dungeon Master needs to adjudicate things that the players are trying to attempt. In addition to that, you will also find a bunch of pre-made characters. These are characters that have already been rolled up that you and your group can use right away to get playing so that you don't have to take the time to learn how to roll up a character. Although rolling up a character for 5th edition isn't an extremely difficult process, it can be kind of daunting if you're unfamiliar with the process or role-playing games in general. Also included is a blank character sheet that you can photocopy for future use. Next we come to the Starter Set Rulebook. The Starter Set Rulebook is an easier to digest and sort of thinned out version of the Player's Handbook. Inside of the Starter Set Rulebook, you're going to find the rules for combat, as well as how the game works, mechanically, the rules for it. Essentially, that's what's going to be in there. Combat, adventuring, spellcasting, conditions, things like that. Also, you're going to find the adventure Lost Mine of Phandelver. Lost Mine of Phandelver is a great adventure and a lot of fun to play. This book is the book that the Dungeon Master will actually use to run the game. And this book is going to tell the Dungeon Master everything that he needs to know in order to run the adventure. There will be text boxes telling you what you need to read aloud to the players, as well as maps that you can show to your players, and they're going to be keyed, and the book will run you through the entire adventure. Once again, I highly recommend buying the starter set. If you're new to role-playing games, if everyone in your group is new to Dungeons & Dragons, and you're just wanting to get started right away without a lot of fuss, and without having to learn how to roll up characters. If you would like to play Dungeons & Dragons without spending any money at all, you're in luck. If you go to the official Wizards of the Coast Dungeons & Dragons website, you will find that they have 2 PDFs that are available for download. These PDFs are legal and they're absolutely free. What they are is the Basic Player's Handbook and a Basic Dungeon Master's Guide. The Basic Player's Handbook is essentially a limited version of the actual Player's Handbook that they have available for purchase. What I mean by that is, they're not removing any of the rules stuff or any of the crunchy stuff. What they're taking away are player options, additional races and additional classes, things like that. The PDF for the Dungeon Master is essentially a condensed monster manual. You'll find a limited selection of monsters in there, but it's mostly just stat blocks, and it doesn't have all of the beautiful artwork that can be found in the actual monster manual available for purchase. I certainly hope this information has helped all of you out in sort of demystifying getting started in Dungeons & Dragons. And just to recap, we have 3 different options to get you started. You can either 1. Purchase the core rule books, 2. Purchase the starter set, or 3. Get the free legal downloads directly from the Wizards of the Coast website. By utilizing one of these three options, you and your group can get started in playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition right away. Once again, I highly recommend that you pick up the starter box, as that is the fastest and easiest way to get you playing the game. I hope you all have found this enjoyable and entertaining and informative. I would like to thank you for watching my video, and have a great day.